Stanley Tucci returns as Frank Mosca on a particularly cold and dangerous episode of Miami Vice. Blood and Roses was directed by George Mendeluk and was written by Robert Palm from a story idea by Dick Wolf. It features the return of Stanley Tucci as Frank Mosca, the brutal mobster who was introduced in the Season 4 premiere Contempt of Court. Contempt of Court was a very good introduction to Mosca, and this episode solidifies his place among the most memorable Miami Vice villains. Crockett and Tubbs stake out the mansion of a man named Wilson Cook, who is running drugs through his spaghetti factory. Cook is played by Michael Wincott, known for playing sleazeballs in films like Strange Days and The Crow. He's currently putting the moves on Gina, who is undercover at the party as an interior designer. Notorious mobster Frank Mosca, who has recently moved back to Miami and who has been laundering money for Cook, shows up at the party unexpectedly. Crockett is alarmed to see his arch-nemesis and is doubly alarmed to see him start flirting with Gina. At headquarters, Castillo asks Gina to focus her investigation on Mosca, while Crockett and Tubbs continue to investigate Cook. Crockett is protective of Gina because Mosca's a very dangerous man, but Gina assures him she can handle herself. Meanwhile, Cook has been going behind Mosca's back by laundering his drug money through a rival mobster named Roth. Mosca shows up at Cook's spaghetti factory, accompanied by his goons, who include his right-hand man, Billy. Billy is played by Frank Stallone, brother to Sylvester, and singer-composer of Far From Over, which is one of those songs that I like to sing mournfully to myself whenever I feel bruised by the world. My personal mixtape of songs for wallowing in self-pity also includes Elton John's I'm Still Standing and Foreigner's That Was Yesterday. Mosca takes the keys to Cook's factory for collateral until Cook can pay him what he's owed. Crockett and Tubbs also visit Cook and give him 24 hours to turn over everything he knows about Mosca's money laundering business. Mosca asks Gina over for dinner under the flimsy pretense of wanting her to decorate his big empty mansion, and Gina does an excellent job of holding his attention. The next day at headquarters, Gina jumps down Crockett's throat when he makes a joke about her date with Mosca. She makes it clear it's just an undercover assignment and she's just doing her job. Crockett and Tubbs stop by Cook's mansion and find him dead in the pool with his throat slit and the world's worst plate of spaghetti in his lap. I mean, it's just unsauced noodles topped with red pepper rings and raw broccoli. Nobody is going to get excited to eat that. Castillo meets with federal attorney Alice Carson, once again played by Meg Foster, who handled Mosca's prosecution back in Contempt of Court. She's accompanied by a pair of federal agents. Castillo requests that Carson and her agents stay far away from Mosca so as not to interfere with Vice's investigation. He mentions that Vice has an undercover agent in place close to Mosca. While Gina's getting dressed for dinner with Mosca, Crockett drops by her apartment to apologize for appearing to undermine her skills as a cop. They have a very sweet scene together, loaded with all that sizzling chemistry that these two have had since the pilot, and even in the face of Crockett's marriage to Caitlin, it's nice to see that these two have retained their close bond. Mosca takes Gina out to dinner, at which he orders a bottle of Dom Perignon and 2 straws, which is kind of charming. In the back of his limo, they drink more Dom Perignon, and while Billy throws his boss concerned glances from the front seat, Mosca begins chatting freely about his illegal enterprises. They go back to his mansion, and while Sweetest Smile by Black plays, they drink more Dom and drunkenly dance around his living room. Mosca keeps trying to move the action to his bedroom, Gina repeatedly says no, he keeps pushing, and ultimately, he rapes her. Headquarters the next day, Gina is hungover and despondent, and it's obvious to everyone that something bad went down. After the briefing, Trudy stays behind to comfort Gina and to tell her not to be too hard on herself about whatever happened. Gina never gives any specifics, and Trudy seems to assume that whatever happened was champagne-fueled and ill-advised, but consensual, and Gina doesn't contradict her. However, it's extremely clear from what we see that this was a rape. The federal agents who accompanied Alice Carson to her meeting with Castillo harass Mosca about his new money laundering venture as he's buying flowers for Gina. Later, it's revealed that one of the agents is on Mosca's payroll, and Mosca is not happy that the feds know about his money laundering. Before Mosca kills him, the agent admits that Vice has a brand new mole in Mosca's organization. Mosca calls Gina to apologize for acting incorrectly, as he puts it, and for the sake of the investigation, Gina reluctantly agrees to go out on another date with her rapist. They go out to dinner with Mosca's business rival Roth, played by Paul Herman. After dinner, a masked man in a passing car sprays Mosca and Gina with bullets while they're waiting for the valet. Crockett and Tubbs speed to the crime scene, where Mosca and Gina are receiving medical attention for minor scrapes. Tubbs urges Crockett to stay away, but Crockett goes over anyway and exchanges some barbs with Mosca. And this, of course, is a very bad move, though motivated by an understandable urge to make sure that Gina's okay, because Billy had carried out the shooting at Mosca's request as part of a scheme to frame Roth for Cook's murder by making it seem like he put out a hit on Mosca as well. Crockett, suddenly popping up out of nowhere, confirms Mosca's growing suspicion that Gina is an undercover Vice cop. Mosca takes Gina back to his mansion. She tries to secretly call Vice, but Mosca eavesdrops on her conversation. Vice arrests Roth in connection with Cook's murder, and Roth, who is nobody's fool, says it was obvious from dinner that Gina's a cop, and it was also obvious that Mosca knows she's a cop. Crockett and Tubbs race to Mosca's mansion while Dangerous Game by Tommy Shaw plays, but Mosca has already taken Gina to Cook's spaghetti factory to kill her. Crockett politely questions Billy as to Gina's current whereabouts, and he and Tubbs burst into the closed factory after Mosca has already whipped out the piano wire he plans to use to kill Gina. Mosca makes a break for it, Tubbs gives Gina his spare gun, and to the rousing strains of Iggy Pop's Winners and Losers, Crockett, Tubbs, and Gina chase Mosca through the factory. Mosca gets the drop on Crockett, but before he can fire, Gina shoots and kills him. As hit or miss as Season 4 could be, this is Miami Vice at the top of its game. It's an episode that really drills home how much it must sometimes suck to be an undercover cop. As in Season 1's Give a Little, Take a Little, Gina finds herself in a position where she's forced into sex to preserve her cover. This time around, we see that it becomes violent, and even after the rape, she still has to keep cozying up to Mosca for the sake of the investigation. It's really brutal and uncompromising. I can't say enough good things about Sandra Santiago's performance as Gina in this one, and I also can't say enough good things about Stanley Tucci's performance as Mosca, who is charming and arrogant and deadly and absolutely loathsome. It's an extremely suspenseful episode in that it seems entirely likely at several points that Gina might not survive this episode. It's a good one for showing just how destructive this job can be for our Vice detectives, and I'm giving it 5 flamingos. Next time, Crockett gets shot, and we get a lot of flashbacks. That's next time, so please meet me here then, and have a great week.